Join me today as I build this infinity portal and stick around to the end to see it in action. So, if you're not familiar with it, there's currently a competition on Terrain Builders Reddit. And the competition is themed around the Call of the Wild. Now, this isn't my idea for what I'm going to make for it. This is just something I wanted to make to practice some different techniques. So I started off with a base made of styrofoam, and this is just big circular pieces of styrofoam, roughly 12 inches wide. So this is pretty big. Now the key part of an infinity mirror is the mirror. I got this mirror for $5 from the corner store, and I've got a giant piece of plexiglass here as well. So I'm going to take this and cut it to the same size as the mirror I have. I'm then going to grab some mirror tint and place that over the piece of plexiglass. The full mirror and the plexiglass mirror will work to bounce off each other and reflect the light infinitely. I then cut some 1-inch pieces of cardboard, paint them black, and these will serve as the spaces between the mirror and the plexiglass. While I wait for those to dry, I'm going to start work on the proper base. I'm just going to roughly draw out with a Sharpie what I want the shape to look like. Then I'm going to cut it out with a Stanley knife and then get to covering it in the homemade sculptor mold. And this is the homemade plaster that I use all the time. Just plaster of Paris, really watered down, and some torn up tissue paper mixed inside. The great part about this is it hides that bubbly foam texture, gives us a nice rock texture, and makes the base nice and strong. I want to have it look like it's a really old portal that's been taken over by time. So I'm going to add these little foam bricks in, and I'm going to push them into the plaster. So it makes it look like they've been taken over by all of the dirt and rubble around them. And just kind of haphazardly place them like they've been pushed away by roots and such. Now for the giant stone case that'll be around the mirror portal, I'm going to use this dust bin turned upside down to get a nice circle. And I'm going to use a paint palette turned upside down as well to get a nice circle. And then cut that out on my foam wire cutter. The cuts aren't the straightest, but that doesn't matter because we're going to take to it with a rock and texture it up really nice. It's now time to start assembling the mirror. I first clean it up so I make sure there's no scratch marks on it or anything like that, and I hot glue on my little surrounding edges. The hot glue does not stick that well to the mirror, but once it's all in place, it's held by friction anyway. I then start laying in all of my lights. I kind of go crazy with it and have the lights crisscrossing through the center. It looks okay on camera, but in real life you can see the wires a bit too much. I might go back and put some polyfill in there, paint it green, so it looks like it's been overcome by the forest or something like that. I then cut a nice spot that I can slide in my entire piece. So I'm just going to cut this to roughly the right size, and surprisingly enough, just by measuring it by eye, I get a pretty snug fit. I then cut a big slot that I can slide the entire thing into, as well as a spot to put the battery pack so it can be accessed from the back. I thought the bare stone was a bit bland, so I decided to segment it into a bunch of bricks. Giant slabs of rock that have been carved out and made into this massive portal. And for good measure, I added some runes on it as well. It is now the morning mist has completely taken over my little workstation outside, so I get on painting the base coat and then get inside warm. Now it's warmed up and the base coat is nice and dry, I go with some blue and greens on the grey stone just to make it look a bit more natural. Now these look quite ugly and bright, but when we come in with a wash later on, it'll look great. And here it is, just a black wash over everything, even the brown. I then use a terracotta and a bright orange to pick out all of the little stone details. With a grey dry brush to settle everything in to the same sort of tone, I'm now done painting. For now at least. Now it's time to properly fit in this little mirror structure. I just do that with a lot of hot glue. With it all done and working, I'm pretty happy with how it's coming along. However, it's now time to try something completely different. I got this bag of peat moss that I'm going to use instead of dirt because I can't really get a hold of really good dirt in Western Australia. It's all sand. The great part about this is that it was $7 for 4 kilos, so I'm not going to run out of any of it soon. And it looks like a really mixed up, nice looking dirt. So I'm going to try mixing it with some water and PVA glue and using it as a texture paste. I realized pretty quickly that this isn't a great idea, and I realized too late that it's going to take too long to dry. This stuff soaks up water really well and doesn't let it go. So if I was doing this in future, I'd probably mix peat moss 50-50 with some burnt umber painted sand. That way you get the best of both worlds. You have the variation of the peat moss, and you get the quick dryingness of the sand. The middle of winter isn't helping with any of this dry, and now I'm going to really experience the brunt of it. I'm going to make a pipe cleaner tree like I have so many times before, originally inspired by Seb's Make Stuffs here on YouTube. And what I'm going to do to it is I'm going to tie it up, I'm going to glue it down, and then I'm going to paint it. And I'm going to paint it brown, and it's going to take ages to dry. It's then time to start mixing in some foliage. I'm just going to take some of these vines that I made a while ago and droop them over the top like it's being overtaken by nature yet again. And then I'm going to mix on some ground cover as well. This ground texture is a mixture of green sawdust, tea leaves, oregano leaves, all sorts of stuff, but it's got way too much green sawdust in it, so I end up coming back and mixing in even more oregano leaves all over it. And now the next day, after the mist is slowly fading away, I'm going to sweep away anything covering the bricks before I continue adding more glue and more flock. And there, everything's been covered with oregano leaves, making sure not to cover the bricks too much, making it look natural like they've been overtaken, but not yet completely covered. I then add on a bunch of this little mossy flock all around the edges of the entire disc, and then add some big pieces of clump foliage as bushes in the corner. Now this is like one of the only things that I'm doing today that I actually tested beforehand, and that's using this green polyfiber to make it look like there is Spanish moss or something similar growing off this giant tree. These trees look great as dead trees, however, if you want to add some life to them, this is the easiest way. So you just work the polyfiber into a nice thin sheet, and then droop it over the branches with some glue, and they look so great. If you put it on really heavy, the weight of the polyfiber is going to pull the tree branches down a little bit and make it look like they're drooping and sagging, which is really cool if you're going for that look. Also, to get the texture looking really nice and natural, you just need to rip it and pull it down so that way it looks like it's falling and doesn't look too uniform. I then sweep off all of the excess oregano leaves and catch it in a little mixture of all my little flocks now. And then I go over with some methylated spirits in a little spray bottle, and then a few drops of some watered down PVA glue just to seal that in so it doesn't go messing around and flaking off everywhere. And I am super happy with how this turned out. The portal looks a bit strange with the lights going through the center. I think I might change it in the future. I might go back, take it off, and cut them off, or fold them around just to be around the edges. But I think the bricks came out really good. It looks super natural. Well, normally natural. Very natural. And I love the way the moss on the tree hangs down and really adds like a whole nother dimension to the entire thing. Anyway, thanks for watching, and join me next week for something different.